why going into Rafah is the red line, but not northern Gaza, where they killed tens of thousands of people? Why is it now, if it goes into Rafah without, concern for casualties, this and that? I mean, it's just so obvious. Again, like we've been talking about, it's just the kind of people they just killed. That's the red line. You killed the wrong people this time.
Yeah, I mean, that's what gets people riled up, certainly over here more. But also, I think that there's no red line because they've never had a plan from the beginning, and they're just going along for the ride on this. Like they really don't care. They do not care. It's just very obvious to me they don't care. You at this point, it's laughable that we're still even discussing like that this is defense or these are mistakes. So then they're that incompetent. I mean, it's just, I just don't believe it. This is absurd at this point.
And I gotta say, and I would say this, I've said this directly to my mother, who I love, and if you're watching, sorry. When you say to me, but what about the hostages? Why is nobody talking about them? This is why nobody's talking about. I care about the hostages. The protests we've been covering, even the pro-Palestinian protesters have called for a ceasefire and the release of the hostages. They're innocent too.
Who doesn't care? You know who doesn't care about the hostages? Because I know who doesn't care about the hostages. Israel doesn't care about the hostages. They've killed their own hostages. If you have hostages somewhere and you don't know where they are and you're just indiscriminately bombing, de facto, you don't care about your hostages. So I don't know why, like, it's so funny to me that Debbie Wasserman Schultz talks about the hostages when Israel killed their own hostages.
Well, speaking of, great segue. Oh, and if you have that, this is where Debbie Wasserman Schultz is hanging out as we drop missiles on food aid workers. If you have that, I sent you Debbie in Israel. If you don't know,
she was just there. Yes, and a nice 8-pack funded trip. Yeah.
So that's Debbie Wasserman Schultz all the way to the right. And for those new to the program here who don't know all the history, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, longtime Florida congresswoman, very corrupt, takes money from all the usual suspects, especially Big Sugar down in Florida. But she was the DNC chair in 2016 who didn't throw her thumb on the scale, threw her entire body on the scale to rig the 2016 primary for Hillary Clinton and rig it against Bernie Sanders. She had to resign in disgrace on the eve of the Democratic National Convention. Democratic Party kind of sort of backbenched her for a little bit because she was kind of like a leadership figure for a while. So she's not as prominent as she used to be, but she's still kind of in the Democratic Party corporatist cabal. And she is a major Zionist, and she is one of the leading figures who uses the rhetorical reverse psychology of anti-Semitism if you criticize Israel. Can you kind of talk about that? Because you're running against her, and that's been her go-to move, even calling you a Jew anti-Semitic for criticizing Israel. That's like calling us, unpatriotic if we criticize the Iraq war at the height of it. So you're anti-Semitic for criticizing the government of Israel? How's that work, Jen?
Well, first of all, when you have no substance and you have no policy, all you have is labeling, name calling, and fear mongering. That's all you have. So for her to play the anti-Semitism card is one of her favorites. It's just constantly putting it out. She uses it as a weapon and a shield. It's really fascinating. I've been watching it for years with her, how she uses that to manipulate people, to control people, to get her way, lots of things. And, really, it's just so old. It's so old. But, she's always in Israel for AIPAC trips. The fact that she was there throughout a chunk of Ramadan and over Easter did not go unnoticed in my district. I will have you know that there are very many people, Palestinian Christians and Muslims and people that have been very aware that that is where she has been. So it's not just, my opinion that this is what her priority is, right? So that's a huge difference. And it isn't just that, it's all special interests. It's all of it. It's totally being on the corporate payroll. It's being an insider trader. It's just ridiculous at this point. It really is. I don't understand how people defend this in any way.
And we're going to get back to your campaign, but I want to show one more thing because I got to tell you, Colin, I just sent it to you whenever you have time to put that up on the screen. I take the L for Tulsi Gabbard. I've been totally honest. I have a great bullshit detector, but it failed me with Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
I would say it did not fail me with one John Fetterman, because as Colin could tell you and private conversations we had, I was not particularly enthused about going to cover Fetterman's race for Senate in November of 2022. But I said, all right, we're a news outlet. We got to go cover something. And he's, I guess, the most progressive-ish. But I in my gut, I knew like something doesn't smell right here. He's not for Medicare for all this and that. Boy, is this guy pulled a 180.
Oh.
He might as well just, smear some hummus on his head and call him fucking, Prime Minister Fetterman. In this war against Hamas, no conditions for Israel. He responded to the news that Biden kind of sort of gave a fake ultimatum. I don't know if this guy is like running to be president of AIPAC or just like realized he got in there by bullshitting that he was kind of progressive, but thinks he could stay in there if he just completely moves to the corporate left. I mean, he's kind of good on some labor issues, but overall, he's further to the right than some Republicans on this. And so much to the point that I was wondering, why is Fetterman's office not responding to me? Because I was reaching out to Ohio senators and Pennsylvania senators after that hearing where the NTSB chair basically said, oh, yeah, Norfolk Southern intentionally nuked East Palestine and lied to the Ohio governor about it. John Fetterman's people didn't respond to me because his 3 top communication staffers have left within the last month. His 3 top communications people,
interesting,
including Joe Cavello, who was a Bernie guy, worked on Bernie's campaign, was Fetterman's press secretary, I believe, really instrumental to helping him get elected despite the stroke, despite his obvious challenges after the stroke. 3 of his top people have left because of this. Because clearly, I mean, you can't really say, all right, he's progressive on everything but Israel. This is not even progressive for like, I know conservatives who are calling out what Israel is doing. Your thoughts on that before we get back to your campaign?
Oh, I said a long time ago, Fetterman's been dead to me for a while. And at this point, I actually would prefer Dr. Oz. Like a long time ago, I would have started preferring Dr. Oz. And I actually think Dr. Oz.
And his, what was that? His couture board? How do you pronounce that?
Charcuterie board.
Charcuterie. Sorry. That's how cultured I am. Yeah.
Charcuterie board. But yeah, I mean, but I at least look at him as somebody that would probably have a certain amount of sympathies to what's going on right now. And apparently Fetterman does not have any. So that is, yeah, I'm just glad at this point that we never had him on the show. And it was because we couldn't get him on the show. I'm not saying it's like I knew any better, but I am glad that at this point that he never got on our show.